We opened up the door from our apartment, and there was a huge pile of rubble.
They are in search and rescue mode. They are trying to identify survivors. I know they have made contact with some, and they are doing everything they can to save lives.
Heartbreaking scenes. The search and rescue continues today. This after a beachfront condo building partially collapsed outside of Miami yesterday morning. Hello, everyone. I'm George Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of NewsWatch. We've learned at least one person is dead and others are trapped. Today's rescue mission means searching for nearly 100 people who are still unaccounted for. Growing concern that the death toll may rise sharply. Officials do not know how many people were inside the tower when it fell. The stories have emerged. They are heartbreaking. Like one where rescuers are trying to reach a child whose parents are feared dead. And in another case where a mother and a child were saved, but the mother's leg had to be amputated to pull her from the rubble. Our prayers remain with the rescuers, their family members, as well as their lost loved ones. The greater Miami community, meanwhile, in Florida, is coming together to help however they can. Some are bringing anything they think might help, like baby diapers and water. One man brought food, hoping to provide some comfort for those inside who are likely going through one of the worst times in their life. He said he knows what it's like for tragedy to strike loved ones.
I'm from Haiti. In 2010, there was a devastating earthquake that happened, and I wasn't there, but I had family there. Even though I wasn't there, I know what is it to need help and stuff.
I think the tough part is when people realize the real outcome. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be bad.
Do you think it's that loss?
It's going to be devastating. A lot of people are going to be dead.
Several Miami-based groups are organizing relief efforts. Religious organizations like a synagogue in Sky Lake are asking for donations to help the families of those impacted. So far, an online donation fund has raised more than $469,000. Miami clergy also say they are joining relief efforts. They will hold mass today for all those affected by the collapse of the condo. We will keep you up to date on how you can help on our website at cbnnews.com. To our nation's capital, where a rare moment of bipartisanship, Senate Democrats and Republicans struck a deal with the president on a plan to address America's infrastructure. But less than 24 hours later, both sides of the aisle are expressing concerns, as you can imagine. Jennifer Wishon explains.
We have a deal.
With most of his top legislative priorities stalled on Capitol Hill, President Biden stepped outside the White House with senators from both sides of the aisle to say he'd struck a deal on a scaled-back $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan.
None of us got all that we wanted. I clearly didn't get all I wanted. But this reminds me of the days we used to get an awful lot done up in the United States Congress.
Meeting a key Republican demand, the plan doesn't raise taxes. Instead, it's paid for by unused COVID-19 relief funds and stepped up IRS enforcement on tax cheaters.
We've been talking about the need for a large infrastructure package for decades. Today, we are delivering.
The deal falls well short of the president's original proposal, and liberal Democrats immediately demanded more.
I think it is way too small, paltry, pitiful, and I will insist on a second package that not only addresses more roads, bridges, and other tangible assets, but also human infrastructure.
And within hours, the president made it clear he won't sign the bipartisan bill until Democrats pass a separate massive spending package that includes tax hikes and funds so-called human infrastructure like childcare, a bill that can be passed with just 51 Democratic votes in the Senate through a process called reconciliation.
It was a tale of two press conferences. Endorsed the agreement in one breath and threatened to veto it in the next. Less than 2 hours. It almost makes your head spin.
Speaker Pelosi offered an insurance policy to appease her base.
There ain't going to be no bipartisan bill unless we are going to have the reconciliation bill.
But for now, the current bipartisan bill meets Republican demands, sticking to traditional infrastructure, spending $109 billion on roads and highways, $65 billion on broadband, and replaces every lead water pipe in America.
This bipartisan agreement represents the largest investment in public transit in American history. And I might add that the largest investment in rail since the creation of Amtrak.
But with many roadblocks ahead, the final passage of this bipartisan deal is far from guaranteed. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Thank you, Jennifer. Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett says world powers cannot do business with the Iranian regime. He spoke at a graduation ceremony for a new crop of Israeli Air Force pilots and described Iranian leadership as a violent and fanatic regime. He said Israel will continue to consult with friends, but they will keep the possibility of Israel's fate in Israel's hands. Earlier this week, Bennett called on world powers to wake up to the dangers of returning to a nuclear agreement with the mullahs in Tehran. Joining me live from Israel is Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Chris, as always, great to have you here on this Friday. Israel's Prime Minister spoke to Air Force graduates, but was he actually sending a message to the White House under Joe Biden?
I think he was, George. He wants to know the dangers. He wants the U.S. and the White House to know the dangers they feel here in Israel about re-entering the deal. The language speaks a lot that it was to the White House. We want to, quote, convince our friends. We want to discuss this out of a deep mutual respect. But as you said in your intro, he wants the fate of Israel to be in Israel's hands, not the U.S. And there was really a huge concern about how a new deal is going to help Iran. For example, George, it appears from reports that already they're going to lift sanctions on Iran's oil industry if they sign this deal. Iran is now stockpiling oil reserves to be able to sell on the open market, and that's going to bring in huge cash for Iran, and it's going to be able to spread its revolution, continue its nuclear program. They're already one level below weapons-grade uranium. And so this warning was not only echoed by Naftali Bennett, but also delivered this week by Israel Chief of Staff Aviv Kovavi at his counterparts at the Pentagon.
Chris, your team has reported that Israel's foreign minister is set to meet with our U.S. Secretary Blinken this weekend. Real quickly, what's the goal of this meeting?
Well, they plan to meet in Rome. They're going to talk about a large strategic issues. That means Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, U.S. aid to the Palestinians. They'll talk about the Abraham Accords. There's a real difference right now in the Naftali Bennett Prime Minister and Yair Lapid. They want no surprises between the U.S. and Israel. They want no daylight. Netanyahu actually went public the other day, and he blasted that. He says the U.S. needs to keep in the loop, but military actions against Iran need to be what the Israel needs to do to it. And if it doesn't keep some daylight between Israel and the U.S., he says that will endanger the Jewish state.
Switching topics here real quickly, we're getting word that Israel, as you know, rolled out the most successful vaccination program in the world. And now there's talk about Israel bringing back mask wearing. What's going on?
Exactly. You have to wear a mask when you're indoors right now. Actually, Naftali Bennett asked Israelis not to travel this summer. They're going to vaccinate children over 12. And Israel was making great progress, but it's this new Delta strain that is increasing cases dramatically. And it feels like for Israelis here, they're going backwards after making so much progress.
Yeah, 85% of the population, they're fully vaccinated, so it's a little concerning. Chris, final seconds here. What can we expect to see on your show, Jerusalem Dateline, this week?
Well, good news. Yesterday, Honduras was the fourth country to move its embassy to Jerusalem. They have an Israeli solidarity mission to American Jews, actually, because of the rise in anti-Semitic attacks. We're going to have analysis on Iran's new president, and we're going to re-air one of your stories, George, about the 12th Imam. We think it's vital for people to know the theology behind the nuclear technology going on in Iran. They believe in the 12th Imam that's going to come back one day. And that's a great story you did many years ago, George.
Well, I will definitely then be watching just because I want to see myself on your show. Chris, as always, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. You can see more news from the Middle East with Chris and his awesome team on this station or on the CBN News Channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern. Okay, folks, can companies protect themselves from digital threats? Coming up, the warning for industries at the center of these ransomware attacks. We'll be back in 2 seconds. 2 minutes, rather.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible, yes, Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Folks, welcome back. You're watching CBN News. No one is immune from the wave of ransomware attacks sweeping industries across the board. What's even more scary? High-tech warfare in the U.S. is now a prime target. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke brings us this dire warning.
The recent wave of attacks using ransomware serve as sobering reminders. No industry is off limits, and no protection is bulletproof.
There are two types of companies out there: those that know that they've been hacked and those that don't yet know, but they've all been hacked.
Recent targets include a global meat producer, a key gas pipeline, hospitals, and dozens of government agencies.
We're not talking about people with conscience. We're talking about criminals who want to make money illegally or who want to do harm independent of a profit motive.
In a ransomware attack, hackers gain access to a computer system and disrupt or completely lock out users until a ransom is paid. Historically, private companies pay the money quickly and quietly. For other victims, that's not always an option.
Cities and government, I really don't think that we're in a position to negotiate with a ransomer or pay ransoms. That is just not something that we are really able to do, nor could we afford.
Kimberly LeGroux is the Chief Information Officer for the City of New Orleans. In early 2020, she led a complete infrastructure rebuild after hackers attacked and the city refused to pay the ransom.
We built those things back stronger. It did not mean that that our systems in whole were destroyed. It just meant that if we were going to really address this and tackle this problem of cybersecurity and safety, that we were going to just start with a fresh and very clean environment.
As with many attacks, the hackers likely gained access through either outdated infrastructure or a user not taking appropriate precautions.
Those legacy systems had their own holes, and we were constantly patching them and constantly modernizing other areas. And to have over 4,000 employees, we have every one of them as a point of vulnerability into our network.
The attack on New Orleans had the capability to completely interrupt or halt government operations. Fortunately, response teams had planned for that type of disaster.
You have to know where your vulnerabilities are. You have to have a consistent plan, a continuous plan to update and modernize those things. And that's what we were doing, and we have been doing for years. So every year we were devoting another part of our budget to infrastructure improvements.
Those plans allowed LaGrue's team to move quickly with money from its cyber insurance policy to further update and secure systems. Still, LaGrue says the city must remain vigilant.
I can't say that we won't be subject to some type of ransom attack again. That is just not feasible.
Security expert Frank Gaffney has raised flags about critical infrastructure vulnerabilities for decades, specifically our power grid. He says that threat goes way beyond these ransom-style attacks.
We have in our electric grid at the moment, by some estimates, as many as 200 to 300 Chinese-manufactured transformers. What could possibly go wrong, as they say? And were those to be shut down, presumably at the command of people in Beijing, the effect of that could be really catastrophic for the national security.
With this recent wave of attacks, Gaffney hopes action will finally be taken to harden the grid and protect other critical infrastructure. Action he believes could ultimately save the lives of tens of millions of Americans.
My persistent prayer has been that I'm wrong about these various challenges to our country, to our economy, yes, but to our security, to our people. I take no pleasure in being vindicated, and I will be particularly devastated if the warnings, mostly unheeded, about our electric grid's vulnerabilities are exploited by one or more of these enemies who understand them.
The reality is America is under attack from a number of sides, and it's the very connectivity we rely on every day that makes us most vulnerable. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. Excellent report. Still ahead, chasing the American dream at any cost. Still ahead, we'll look into the path of trying to cross our border illegally and the challenges they face. We'll have that story in a moment.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back, folks. Today, Vice President Kamala Harris will make a trip to the southern border. This comes as large numbers of migrants continue to come to the U.S.-Mexico border. Experts and politicians believe this visit may help shape critical policies to address the root causes of migration. Meanwhile, each day, Border Patrol works to stop illegal border crossing, but they can't stop everyone. Tara Mojana looks into where these migrants go.
Signs of the migrant surge, like these pants left behind, are obvious on the border. But experts say the problem is increasingly being felt across the nation in areas far from the Rio Grande Valley. Sneaking into Texas's Rio Grande Valley, now by the thousands per day. Most traveling through multiple countries to get here in search of the American dream.
Were you worried that once you got here, if they would let you in or not?
Yes, I was worried, but God granted this opportunity.
Record numbers taking that same chance, nearly all paying smugglers to get them here, then turning themselves into border agents. And within hours, dropped off by the dozens at area shelters. Bus stations.
We supply them with backpacks that'll have water and blankets, masks, a snack pack.
And even airports. On our plane to Dallas, migrants packed the flight, some with first-class tickets. Due to the lenient immigration policies now in place, most will never face a judge.
Usually you're given a court date and you are supposed to appear, which most don't appear, but at least you're given a court date. Now they're not even given a court date.
Once again, we have to begin with the rising cases of coronavirus in the U.S.
Not to mention, this is all happening during a pandemic. Forget temperature checks, as Border Patrol only tests migrants with symptoms. Others are checked at pop-up sites like this one at the Brownsville bus station. We saw how those testing positive were placed across the room from others, yet they still boarded buses bound for cities across the U.S., some likely spreading COVID along the way. Organizations like Catholic Charities are also in the middle of the chaos. The difference we saw is that they test hundreds of migrants each for the virus. Anyone testing positive packed into vans and sent to area hotels where they are urged.
We'll test them every single day until we see a negative test result. In the meantime, they get cared for, meals and anything they need.
But not forced to quarantine.
We're in the middle of a pandemic. For so long, we've been told, stay home. Kids cannot go back to school. Keep your business closed. I don't understand what their comprehension is, to allow so many people to come in.
According to law enforcement, that large number is also due to smugglers who are cashing in to the tune of billions of dollars.
Do you think that the increasing numbers coming over right now is going to create more opportunity for these smugglers?
Yes, I firmly believe that it's going to increase the numbers of stash houses. The individuals that are crossing the river, they pick them up along the river in a vehicle and bring them to an area such as this one here.
Migrants, some kidnapped, others running from the law themselves, are often kept in deplorable conditions as their keepers demand more money to take them deeper into the U.S., often along with drugs.
What kind of people hide in stash houses?
We've had elderly from male, female with a newborn, children.
Until recently, Border Patrol's intel team conducted hundreds of stash house raids per year. But we're told many have been reassigned to caring for the migrants once they cross the border, leaving law enforcement to catch smugglers on the next leg of the journey on the nation's highways and back roads.
They try alternative routes. They're always looking to find different routes to smuggle, whether it's humans or narcotics.
Hidalgo County constables are among those getting federal money to pay for overtime on border security. That includes traffic stops like this one, where we saw officers suspicious of a speeding car full of young men heading north.
This is just one of a number of these stops just in the last, really few minutes.
Our
Our deputies, along with Border Patrol, have conducted more than 8 to 10 traffic stops within the last 30 minutes. And obviously, they got one. 9295, Acosta.
And as we learned of another disturbing trend, U.S. citizens are increasingly helping migrants evade authorities. All of this leading to the same question: who and how many more migrants get away each day? In Hidalgo County, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back. Yogi Berra's legacy can now live forever in the corner of your mail. U.S. Postal Service dedicated a stamp to the New York Yankee during a ceremony in Little Falls, New Jersey. Berra won 3 American League MVP awards and won 10 World Series.
We're so proud as a family that they included my dad in that history, and he has a comfortable place there, and we're very happy.
Well, we like that spot. His family also thanked the Postal Service for honoring a baseball icon who demonstrated the right way to earn the respect of people everywhere. Well, folks, that's it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with CBNnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com, or you can reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On behalf of the producer of the show, excellent show, Elise, we wish you all a fantastic Friday and a great weekend ahead. Stay safe. Goodbye. God bless.